everyone. Ready to get a little dark today?
Always.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Today's deep dive is all about Gone Girl.
Ooh.
That thriller that just seems to inspire like fanatical love and equally passionate hate.
Yeah.
We've got a stack of Goodreads reviews.
Oh.
Everything from, this is a masterpiece to I wanted to chuck this book across the room.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
seeing those extremes. Yeah. What's so interesting about using reviews like this is that it goes beyond just did people like it. We get to see why it pushes those buttons.
Exactly.
What about Gone Girl makes some readers obsessed and others completely repulsed?
Right. So let's unpack what makes this book tick.
Okay.
Right off the bat, you get hit with this unreliable narrator situation.
Okay.
We hear from both Nick and Amy in first person.
Yeah.
But Amy's parts are written as her diary entries.
And that's a brilliant move by Gillian Flynn.
It is.
Because diaries trick us on a psychological level. We
Wow.
associate them with honesty, vulnerability.
Right.
So we're primed to believe Amy even sympathized with her.
Oh, totally.
Then as the story goes on, that trust is totally shattered.
Yes.
Boom.
It's like she's lulling you into this false sense of security, and then bam.
Yep.
The rug is pulled out from under you.
Totally.
Have you ever had that experience as a reader?
Oh, yeah.
Where you realize the narrator has been lying to you the whole time?
Yeah.
It completely changes how you see everything.
Absolutely. It makes you question every detail, every motivation.
Oh, yeah.
But beyond the plot twists, it makes you think about the psychology of lying.
Right.
What drives someone to create such an elaborate facade? And what does that say about how we present ourselves to the world?
That's a great point. Speaking of characters who might be putting on an act,
Okay.
we have to talk about Nick and Amy themselves.
Oh, boy.
I swear, these two spark some of the strongest reactions I've ever seen to fictional characters.
It's fascinating how invested people get in their relationship,
I know.
even when it's clearly toxic and destructive.
It's so true.
Some readers adore Amy, praising her intelligence and cunning, even calling her a feminist icon for defying expectations.
Right. You see comments like, Amy is my hero, or she's just doing what she has to do to survive.
Right.
But then you have others who absolutely despise her, calling her a manipulative sociopath.
What I find particularly interesting is how often those reactions are tied to gender. Nick is often called out for being a Winnie man-child, even when he's arguably the victim of Amy's manipulations.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder if we're more willing to forgive a woman who resorts to extreme measures, especially when she's been wronged.
That's such a good point. Like, are we more likely to see Amy's actions as understandable, even justified because of the societal pressure she's facing?
Right.
Does that make us more sympathetic to her even when she's doing terrible things?
It definitely raises questions about how our own biases and societal expectations influence how we judge characters, particularly female characters who defy traditional roles.
Right.
But regardless of whether you love them or hate them, there's no denying that Nick and Amy are compelling.
Oh, they're completely compelling.
They get under your skin, and that's part of what makes Gone Girl so hard to put down.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You know it's going to be bad, but you just can't look away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But these unlikable characters are only part of the equation.
Okay.
The way Flynn tells the story,
Mm.
the suspense she builds, that's what really keeps you hooked.
Yes.
And speaking of suspense, we can't ignore the element that Gone Girl is most famous for. The twists.
Ah, the twists. One reviewer described a particular reveal as a total what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think there's a better way to describe it.
It's clear that Flynn is a master of playing with the reader's expectations.
She is.
She drops these subtle clues, these little hints that you don't even realize are important until later.
Right.
And then when the twist hits, it's like this explosion of realization.
Oh my God. Yes. And it makes you want to go back and reread the whole book just to see how she did it.
Totally.
How she managed to manipulate you so expertly.
Yeah.
But even if you do figure out a twist or two beforehand, there's still this enjoyment in seeing how everything unfolds.
Absolutely.
How the characters react and how Flynn uses those twists to propel the story forward.
A good twist isn't just about the shock value. It's about how it deepens the characters and the themes of the story.
Right.
It's about forcing you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another aspect of Gone Girl that even the harshest critics tend to agree on.
Yeah.
The writing itself.
The writing.
Even people who hate the characters or the ending will admit that Flynn's prose is sharp, witty, and almost surgically precise.
Yeah.
You constantly see reviewers praising her razor-sharp style
Yeah.
or her ability to capture the nuances of human interaction, even the darkest ones.
Flynn has this uncanny ability to make you feel like you're right there in the characters' heads, experiencing their thoughts and emotions, even the most disturbing ones.
Oh, yeah.
But beyond the psychological thriller elements, there's this layer of social commentary that adds a whole other dimension to the book.
Right. It's not just a story about a messed up marriage. It's a critique of so much more.
Yeah.
Gender roles, the media, the way we present ourselves to the world.
And one of the most talked about examples of this is that cool girl monologue that we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes.
Without giving too much away, Amy basically dissects this societal expectation that women have to be effortlessly perfect, low maintenance, and always agreeable.
It's like she's calling out this impossible standard that so many women feel pressured to conform to.
Right.
And even if you don't agree with everything Amy says that monologue resonates because it articulates something so many of us have experienced.
Exactly. It makes it think about how we perform gender roles, how we try to fit into these preconceived notions of what it means to be a woman, a wife, a girlfriend.
Totally.
And that's just one example of how Gone Girl goes beyond being just a thriller. It becomes this reflection of our own anxieties and the societal pressures we all face.
It's like Flynn is holding up a mirror to our culture and saying, look, this is who we are. This is what we've become.
Right.
And it's not always pretty,
No.
but it's definitely fascinating
Yeah.
and kind of terrifying.
And that's just the beginning. There's so much more to unpack in Gone Girl, from the deeper themes of identity and manipulation to that infamous ending that leaves readers either cheering or throwing their books across the room.
Oh my goodness.
So buckle up, because we're just getting started. In part 2, we'll delve even deeper into those themes and explore why that ending is so damn controversial.
Buckle up, everybody.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Gone Girl.
If you're just joining us, definitely go back and listen to part 1.
Yeah.
We covered like the unreliable narrator setup, those crazy twists and how people either love or hate Nick and Amy with a passion.
Yeah. Now let's dig into some of the recurring themes
Okay.
that make Gone Girl more than just a standard thriller. One thing that keeps popping up in these Goodreads reviews is the way Flynn uses this heightened, almost over-the-top scenario
Right.
to talk about very real relationship issues.
It's like she takes those anxieties we all have, expectations, communication breakdowns, resentment, simmering under the surface,
Right.
and dials them up to 11.
To 11, exactly.
One reviewer said it's a story about how relationships go bad when those things aren't addressed. But in Gone Girl, it's not just bad, it's explosive.
Right. It's almost a cautionary tale about what happens when those unspoken tensions reach a breaking point. But Flynn also cleverly uses this twisted plot to examine societal expectations,
Okay.
particularly those placed on women.
Right.
We touched on the cool girl monologue before,
Yes.
but it's worth spending more time there.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
I have to admit that monologue was one of the things that really stuck with me.
Uh.
Amy lays bare this pressure women feel to be perfect, low maintenance, to fit this mold of what men supposedly want, even if it means suppressing your true self.
and so many women responded to that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it articulates something they feel, but might not have words for.
Yeah.
It's like Flynn gave voice to this collective frustration with the double standards women face.
You see reviews saying Amy's their hero for exposing this, for refusing to play the game anymore.
Right.
But then there's the flip side, people who think that even if the critique is valid, Amy's methods are horrifying.
That's the brilliance of it.
Yeah.
It's not a simple girl power story.
Right.
Amy's actions are extreme, and we're forced to grapple with whether that makes her critique less valid or even more disturbing.
It makes me think of how we judge female characters in general.
Yeah.
Earlier, we talked about Nick getting called a man-child, while Amy gets more leeway for her actions.
All right.
Is it because we expect women to be more manipulative, so we're less shocked when they are?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It gets to the heart of whether the book is critiquing misogyny or actually perpetuating it.
Right.
Some reviewers see it as a feminist text, showing how women are punished for defying expectations.
But others see those same actions, the manipulation and vindictiveness,
Right?
as reinforcing negative stereotypes.
Yeah, it sparks this debate that goes way beyond the book itself,
Totally.
about how we depict women in fiction, what
Yeah.
messages that sends.
And the conversation around Gone Girl keeps evolving.
It does.
It was published over a decade ago,
Yeah.
but it's still relevant because those same anxieties about gender roles and relationships are playing out in our culture today.
Absolutely.
Beyond gender, there's this whole other layer of commentary about the media.
Okay.
One reviewer compared it to the bonfire of the vanities, where the media frenzy becomes almost as important as the crime itself.
It's like Flynn is using this fictional disappearance
Uh-huh.
to show how the media can twist narratives,
Yeah.
how they create these simplified versions of events, often at the expense of truth or nuance.
And then we, as consumers of media, get swept up in it.
Right.
We form judgments based on sound bites and headlines.
Mhm.
The book really makes you think about how easily we can be manipulated by those in power, whether it's the media, the legal system, or even our own partners.
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
Speaking of manipulation,
Oh,
there's another theme running through this book that I find both fascinating and unsettling:
yeah.
the nature of identity.
Okay.
Both Nick and Amy are constantly performing, presenting these curated versions of themselves to the world.
It's like they're both wearing masks.
Yes,
And as the story progresses, those masks start to crack.
they do.
One reviewer quoted a line from another author.
Okay.
The mask given time comes to be the face itself.
And that quote is so perfect for Gone Girl,
Oh, it is.
because the secrets these characters are hiding are so dark, so twisted, that the masks they wear have to be even more elaborate.
Which makes you wonder how much of our own identities is performance.
Right.
Are we all just playing roles to some extent?
To some extent.
And when does that performance become so ingrained that we lose sight of who we really are underneath?
It's a thought-provoking question, especially in a world dominated by social media where we're constantly curating our online personas.
Oh, yeah.
Gone Girl takes that idea to its extreme, showing how those facades can crumble and reveal the darkness lurking beneath.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Marriage manipulation, the media, the very nature of identity.
Uh-huh.
But I want to circle back to those plot twists.
Okay.
Because they're such a huge part of what makes Gone Girl so gripping.
Those twists aren't just there for shock value.
Right.
They serve a deeper purpose,
Yeah.
forcing us to question our assumptions about the characters and the story itself.
Totally.
One reviewer described the book as a puzzle box, with each twist revealing a new layer of complexity and deception.
And it's like Flynn is both the architect of that puzzle box and the mischievous guide leading you through it.
Right.
You can almost feel her watching you struggle, knowing all the dead ends and false paths you're about to encounter.
And I think she enjoys that.
Oh, totally.
The real satisfaction comes not from solving the puzzle, but from experiencing the disorientation and discomfort along the way.
Right.
It's not a comfortable read,
No.
but it's one that forces you to engage, to think, to question everything.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but the biggest piece of the puzzle remains
Ooh,
that ending.
that ending, and trust me, we're saving the best or perhaps the most disturbing for last.
All right.
In part 3, we'll tackle that controversial ending head on and explore why it leaves some readers feeling satisfied and others completely betrayed. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Gone Girl. We've been unpacking the unreliable narrators, the thorny characters, and the sharp social commentary.
And now we finally have to talk about that ending.
The ending, yeah.
It's the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
right? No other part of this book sparks as much debate.
What's so interesting is how closely the reactions to the ending mirror the reactions to Amy herself. If you were Team Amy all along, admiring her intelligence,
Right.
you probably felt a certain satisfaction with how things wrap up.
Like, yes, Queen, get away with it. But if Amy's manipulations left you cold, the ending probably felt hollow, maybe even infuriating.
We see this play out in the reviews.
Oh, yeah.
Some call it perfectly mind-fucking or
Yeah.
tragically perfect,
Right.
as if it were the only logical conclusion to this twisted story.
But then there are those who feel utterly betrayed by the ending.
Yes.
Like the rug was pulled out from under them one last time. One reviewer even said it made them declare Gone Girl the worst book they'd ever read.
Those who hated the ending often bring up the lack of justice, the lack of closure.
Yeah.
It's messy, it's ambiguous, and it leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions.
I can see how that would be frustrating for some readers. It's like after all that buildup, all those shocking twists and turns,
Right.
there's no neat resolution, no sense of right being restored.
And I think that's intentional on Flynn's part.
Okay.
She's not interested in providing easy answers or moral clarity.
Right.
Instead, she leaves us wrestling with the implications of what happens when people do terrible things and don't face traditional consequences.
It makes you wonder what is getting away with it in a world where morality is so fluid,
Right.
where the lines between victim and villain are constantly shifting.
Exactly. Gone Girl isn't a story about good guys and bad guys.
Okay.
It's a story about flawed, complex individuals who make choices, sometimes horrific ones, and then have to live with the consequences, whatever those may be.
So let's talk about those consequences or lack thereof. What does the ending tell us about Nick and Amy and about Flynn's overall message?
I think it reinforces the idea that these characters are trapped in a toxic dance.
Okay.
They're both deeply flawed, capable of love and cruelty, manipulation and self-preservation.
One reviewer even went so far as to call them a narcissist and a sociopath.
Yeah.
That might be a bit extreme, but it does highlight the extremes of their personalities.
And the ending suggests that despite all the betrayals and manipulations, they're bound to each other. They need each other to maintain those carefully constructed identities, even if that means living a lie.
It's like without the other, they'd have to face the emptiness at the core of their own existence. Kind of bleak, right? But also really thought-provoking.
It's definitely not a feel-good ending,
No.
but it's a testament to Flynn's skill as a writer that she can create characters so compelling, yet so repellent characters who make us question our own moral compass.
Okay, so we've talked about the ending's impact on the characters, but why do you think Gone Girl has resonated with so many readers even years after its publication? What makes it more than just another thriller?
I think it taps into these very real anxieties we have about modern relationships,
Okay.
particularly in a world saturated with the social media and carefully curated personas.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with images of perfect couples' ideal lives.
Yeah.
And it can create this sense of pressure of inadequacy.
It's like we're all performing to some extent, trying to project this image of happiness and success.
Right.
And Gone Girl takes that to the extreme, showing how easily those facades can crumble and reveal the messiness underneath.
It becomes this cautionary tale for the Instagram age,
Mhm.
reminding us that appearances can be deceiving and that even the most seemingly perfect couples can harbor deep secrets and resentments.
But it also goes beyond just relationship anxieties.
Yes.
There's this cultural fascination with true crime, with trying to understand the psychology of those who commit horrific acts.
Right.
And Gone Girl allows us to explore that darkness from a safe distance.
Right. We get this glimpse into the minds of the perpetrators, into their motivations and justifications.
Yeah.
And that can be both repelling and fascinating.
Mhm.
It makes us confront the uncomfortable truth that maybe we're not so different from these characters after all.
Maybe we all have that capacity for darkness, for deceit, for self-preservation, even at the expense of others.
And that's a really unsettling thought, but it's also what makes Gone Girl so powerful. It challenges us to confront our own assumptions about relationships, about morality, about the very nature of good and evil.
This deep dive has been a wild ride, hasn't it? We've gone from dissecting unreliable narrators to grappling with the darkest corners of the human psyche.
It has been a wild ride.
And that's the beauty of a book like Gone Girl.
It really is.
It stays with you long after you finish reading, prompting you to question everything and to keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I hope you'll continue exploring these questions, discussing the book with others, and maybe even taking a closer look at the masks we all wear in our own lives. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.